All right, I'll get us started. We'll go through all of the basics first, so we'll get to the meaty stuff pretty soon. Welcome everyone to our Q&A with Qlik Developer series. Today we will be exploring customizing extensions. So we hope you have joined us if you've been using Qlik's extension API and are interested or actively working to migrate your custom visualizations. We're going to be focusing primarily on Nebula.js, but do let us know if you have any other questions regarding our other source libraries. For some background, this is Support's Q&A with Qlik webinar series. It's a live question and answer session, or you may have seen us refer to it as our live office hours with our expert panelists. This is the developer wing of the program, which means we really get into the technical nitty-gritty for our advanced users out there. We want you to use this time to ask a question on today's topic and hopefully get to know some of our product and support organization as they keep the wheels turning here at Qlik. I am Katie Davis, and I will be your moderator for this session. I'm a senior community program manager, bringing support-related events like these to our users and also working on various digital channels on Qlik Community. You might have seen me posting on our support updates blog. That's another place that you can get support news and product updates. I'm located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which is along the east coast of the United States. Now, before I introduce our panelists, I'll quickly go over our session parameters. Everyone is currently on mute, and we ask that you type your question in the Q&A panel below. So you'll see a little box, just hit that and type your question and we'll get it. We won't necessarily be typing back the answer to you because we want to get to them all live today, and we'll speak to them in real time. So we love when our participants have future topics you'd like to hear about. We're actually going on a bit of a summer hiatus for the next few months, but if there's something you really want to hear about, let us know and we might pop up a little sooner than that if you want to hear some more developer topics. So, or you can let us know any topics for our other general series that has anything product or feature related. We're happy to answer those questions. You can email your ideas to digital@qlik.com or share those suggestions when you register. Speaking of registrations, when you go sign up for our next session, which I think the June session is, yes, Qlik Lineage for your data dynasty, make sure that you click all the way at the bottom. There's a box that says subscribe here or sign up for future sessions. That way you'll get an invite and you won't miss what's coming up. Our survey link will also pop up when the session is ended, but it's here with a QR code now. If you want to take a image of it, it'll take you to our survey that takes 15 seconds. We also will email out that link with the recording 1 week from today, and it'll also be posted on our programs page on Qlik Community. So keep an eye out for that. And want to let everyone know that although we have our Qlik Techsperts on the line, we will not be able to answer any of your questions regarding a specific open case. And we ask that you keep the questions relevant to today's topic, and that topic, of course, is customizing extensions. So without further ado, let me tell you who we have with us today. We have Jeff Goldberg, who's a product management director. Hi, Jeff. We have
what's up?
Gertrude Westron, who is one of our Qlik developer advocates. Thanks for joining us again, Gertrude. And then we have a new panelist with today, Tobias Ostrom, and he is a product area architect, and I'm told is a Nebula.js guru. So we're really happy to have all of you today. Jeff, Gertrude, we appreciate you coming back, and we hope all of you can enlighten us in the Qlik developer space.
I just have to say, Katie, I don't know where you found that picture of Tobias, but that is so awesome.
from LinkedIn. You can find us all on LinkedIn.
That is the best.
So I'll let you guys. Jeff, do you want to go and give a little bit more background on yourself before we get started?
I think we should probably jump into it, but just real quick, it's good to see everyone here again. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jeff Goldberg. I'm the platform product manager here for Qlik Cloud. I also play in the API strategy space, do a lot of work with our OEMs, even though my colleague Dave Shannon, who is taking over the reins for OEM product management, I can see is on the call today, which is great. Really excited to continue to evolve our developer platform and provide more opportunities for our customers to expand and extend our ecosystem. Tobias is foundational in our ability to do that, especially as we look at the way that we have been doing things in the past and some of the legacy that we carry. Being able to move towards more framework agnostic solutions like Nebula, where you can use different front-end frameworks and provide the same sort of experience or the same Qlik experience, regardless of the tech stack you choose, is super important and super great. And looking forward to seeing how, when you want to create your own visualizations, or you're looking to take visualizations that you've built in the past and move them to this framework agnostic format. Looking forward to answering those kinds of questions today for you.
That's awesome. And Gertrude, you want to give us a little background on yourself before we dive in?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Gertrude, and I'm a junior developer advocate here at Qlik. I have been with Qlik for almost 6 months now, and I am based in our Lund office in Sweden, and I'm very happy to have a chat with you. Feel free to ask whatever questions you have based on the topic.
Awesome, thank you. And last but not least, Tobias, would you like to share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am, as Kit said, a project area architect here at Qlik. I've been working at Qlik for almost 9 years now, or 9 years to the day.
Wow,
To
almost
the day.
on a decade.
Wow.
Oh,
Congratulations.
Yeah, almost. It's very aligned to my oldest daughter's age.
So it's easy to keep track of.
Yeah, easy to keep track of. And I've been working with visualizations all the time. And currently I work mostly with Nebula framework and all the shorts around that. Trying to get that to work as great as possible. So I'm very interested to hear your questions and receive any feedback on it that you might have. It's always good to get and see what we can improve or simplify for you guys.
That's awesome. I think we'd like you to share a quick demo and overview before we go into questions. I'll remind everyone that as Tobias is doing that, make sure to put your questions that you have along the way in the Q&A below. I'll stop sharing my screen, and then we can give everyone a little context to this session.
Sure. So what I thought I'd start sharing is because I think the title of this session was Nebula extensions, and specifically how to move over from the old extensions API. So I thought I'd give a short overview and a short example on how simple it actually can be. So to get you started with something like that, I always suggest you go to the qlik.dev developer portal. And for this specific purpose, there is actually a good tutorial on it. If I can find it, if you click here first, and then we find the one called.
It's the second one from the top.
The second one from the top, yeah, that one. Migrate an existing visualization extension to Nebula. So this one, this tutorial will take you through the steps on how to do it. And it might seem a bit daunting, but in reality, it's actually quite simple. it might require you to know some stuff about modern web development, things like NPM, things like how we build and bundle JavaScript nowadays. But outside of that, it's quite straightforward. So what I did was that I put together an example, and this example exists in some form on a repository in GitHub that we have, which is called Nebula.js examples. And here we try to add different types of setups that you might come across. And the one I want to show today is basically called the simple chart, which is a simple, very simple implementation, a basic implementation of a Nebula chart. But next to it, you can find some other examples. For example, how to integrate Nebula fully using Webpack, how to make use of shared libraries when using Nebula and Webpack, for example. So it's a pretty good resource if you are doing this type of more full-scale development, and you use Nebula and Qlik for it. So if we look at the simple chart thing here, the first thing I wanted to show was an implementation of an old extension. So in this case, I have an old extension list, and if you're familiar with that, it always starts with this define thing, which uses require and some old web libraries to link in things. So here is where you define, for example, if you need the Qlik and the Qlik object, the Qlik namespace, or jQuery or something, is where you put that up there. The thing it does is return an object, and the object has a function called paint. And the paint function gets in your element, which is in this case an Angular element, and the data layout you need. And this extension does something very simple. It just renders something to the element that you got using the first cell in your data. In this case, there's only a measure. Above it, we have the property panel definition, and we have the initial properties. And that's all there is to a extension, really. And then you can build it out with all sorts of complicated functionality. And if we look at the same thing in Nebula, I need to get past this power thing. I have a Nebula extension here instead. And this is basically the equivalent functionality that you saw before in the old extension one. So then in this case, we use modern JavaScript. So we use import statements and these export default, which is something called modules, ES6 or ES5, something. It's modules at least, which can simplify importing different files, things like that, but it requires you to actually build your extension in the end. So what you have is a function called Supernova, or you can call it whatever you want, but we usually call it Supernova, which is the name for an extension in the Nebula universe, if you put it like that. This has then a component function, which is roughly equivalent to the paint function. It takes in new arguments here, but it uses a few functions, a few hooks, which is a way of defining dependencies to your function. In this case, we are dependent on the element and the layout. So we bring this in using these two functions, which are imported from Stardust, and then we do the exact same thing that we did in the other extension. And this will magically make your extension update every time that the layout updates. So if you have this in your app and you do selections, this will magically rerun due to how Nebula is set up and how it watches that layout change, and we get that from Engine. Up here we have properties and data, and these two are basically equivalent of what you have in the old extensions. the properties definition, which was this thing, is what do we show in the properties panel inside the Qlik Sense. And that hasn't changed because as we run inside Sense, we do the same thing. So here we link to properties, which is this file. So basically, we have a definition that's very similar to that. And the data is also very similar, just a setup on to show what data we want to use. So that's a brief intro to how to write your extension. Well, how do you then run it? To do that, we have a few command line interface tools for you. And if we look in this package.json file, I have it set up to run these scripts already. You have a build command, a serve command, and a sense command in this case. And if I do build, it builds the data for me. It builds the extension for me, and it outputs this file, this folder, which is the minified and compiled code that I can then use to run this somewhere else. If I run the serve command, which I have running here already, I get the development. Where did I put it? Hold on. Yeah, it's here. The development environment for this. And if you can see, it opens up to a like a dev screen like this. And here is my extension, and here is my simplified property panel. And you can see I've added my measure, and it renders out this exact thing that I had here, like that. And then the last command is Nebula sense. And if I run that, your sense, in this case, it will build me a sense extension. So it will produce the files I need to be able to upload this into the sense product, be it QCS or UC for Windows or Windows, or if you run desktop. And that's it as a simple starting introduction for us.
That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you. It definitely helps set the scene for our questions. So let me get back to sharing.
Stop here.
All right. Okay. Oh, am I sharing the wrong? Do you see my presentation?
We see your presentation, and
okay.
we see the barcode.
Awesome. For the future sessions, just got to keep on plugging this.
Yeah.
All right, let me jump into the questions. The first question is, when can I export data to Excel from my extensions in Qlik Cloud?
So I'll take this one. So I think there's differences between how our client managed solution handles exporting data and how Qlik Cloud is handling data now. Part of that just has to do with the cloud architecture and the capabilities that it affords us. As of right now, exporting data is not available in extensions. It's available through the Sense client. So if you're using them in mashups and that sort of thing, exporting data won't necessarily work today. And there's a reason and Tobias, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a reason why exporting data is no longer like part of the extension framework. And the reason why that is we're really trying to leverage decoupling the different capabilities of the platform so that you don't have to bring in a whole set of code like you used to with capability, or like you do with capability API, where you're bringing the entire the client code base with you. So what you would do is the reporting services API, which is a REST API, you will be, in time, it's on the roadmap, be able to send basically a definition of your hypercube, which is the data structure from what the customer or from what your end user has selected. You'll be able to send that definition into the reporting service, and it will then produce like an Excel file or a CSV file. And that, what's nice about it is because it's using this different service, it actually compartmentalizes that work. So you're not having to worry about the overhead taxing your actual user experience. It almost produces and provides the export data capability as like an asynchronous type of action, whereas in the client managed world, it's more of a synchronous action because you're calling the engine directly and asking for it to export data. So I know it's a highly requested feature by many of our partners who build third-party extensions. You certainly can start to work with the reporting services API today. It is a published API on qlik.dev. And we're hoping that we'll be able to add the export capabilities to that in the near future. And I think based on what Tobias showed, how you layer that functionality into your extension is based upon, he showed a simple example, but that simple example you can build just by using plain old JavaScript or using your favorite front-end framework, additional capabilities using a combination of the REST APIs that we have and other functionality potentially from other solutions as well.
Great. All right, and we have a couple questions on Nebula, what it can do and cannot do. The next one here is third-party extension printing. Can I do this with Nebula?
It's it's very similar to what Jeffrey just said.
Awesome.
It's printing goes through the reporting service as well. But I can add something to what Jeffrey said, as that well, we do want to compartmentalize these things to make sure that when you work with Nebula, you don't have to worry about where the reporting service is. If you don't need it, you shouldn't have to worry at all. And you shouldn't have to have that configuration and that extra stuff needed. But at the same time, we do want to make it somewhat simple, a type of plug and play scenario, so that when you do want it, it should be straightforward and easy to do. So that's what we have on our roadmap, but we will get to eventually.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. So third-party extension printing. Big challenge that we have with that today is that when those extensions are running, they're running inside of QCS, and so we're currently actively researching how we secure our environment so that we can run those third-party extensions in isolation without having to without the potential of any sort of impact to overall QCS. I think, in general, we're all looking to do the right thing, but there are situations where bad actors may provide malicious code. That malicious code, if it's running in our boundary, stands to pose a risk. And so that's why we haven't allowed that in the past, but it's something that we definitely want to support in a very short period of time.
Okay. And we have a question from Lars. Do you have any examples on how to automate the removal and importing of the extension, like the functionality of accesses groups QX? I probably butchered that last part.
Let me just, it's been a long time since I've looked at access groups QX.
Okay.
So I think, Lars, I think that, just looking at this really quick, I see how, what this is, right. So I think what you're basically doing is you're doing this almost like a DevOps CI/CD of your extension from your local environment into Qlik Cloud. I think one of the things that Tobias showed, which is pretty cool, is that even within your local environment, if you pick dimensions and measures, because you're connected to an app through that Nebula interface that Tobias showed, you can actually interact with your visualization without even having to import it into the server to start using it. That being said, you can easily add into your process. You could build something that does the build, does the sense, zips up that file programmatically, and uploads that into your tenant if you have an API key. And I think that it's actually it's good feedback for us to think about as it relates to building extensions, but also how we talk about integrating. We're also building a platform SDK right now that handles more backend type actions like what you're asking about. And so that integration of when you're building extensions and being able to add that, use the platform SDK to help with your pipeline. It's interesting feedback we can take into our approach. And thanks for reminding me about QXT. I had forgotten that they built this. This is really nice.
That's great. Thank you, Lars. And for everyone else, Lars asked that question through the Q&A panel. So put your questions in that area. And we have another one here. It says, Nebula looks a lot like React. Is that the only framework I can use with it?
No. No. Nebula does use React internally, but it exposes nothing, and it's built to be very, very framework agnostic. So the idea is that you can use it with any modern framework of your choice. It exposes only plain old regular JavaScript, basically. So be it used with React or Vue or anything like that, will work very, very, very nicely, actually.
Good. Great. All right, so this is a little bit of a roadmap question, so we'll see how much we can answer it. When is Capability API being deprecated? Is it going to use Nebula as well?
I love this question. It's like the question that just keeps on giving. They're
It's,
coming
yeah.
back and back and back.
Everyone wants to know.
It's almost like it's one of the questions that we prep for the call. There are no plans currently to deprecate the Capability API. I think what you saw Tobias go over in the way that the extension API works, it requires require.js. Require.js is a I think it's a bundler. It's a pack. It basically helps you load modules and packages for these extensions. It's something that the modern web has moved away from over the past couple of years, and I'd say that that's one of the biggest challenges with using the Capability API is the race conditions that come into play with respect to loading modules through require.js, having the appropriate authentication already set up. But no, there's no plans right now. And in fact, we have some updates coming to the Capability API, as well as the use of Enigma, which is the backend for Nebula. And I may sneeze in a second, but I'm going to try to hold it off. And that's OAuth 2 support. And so we're planning to integrate and implement OAuth 2 public client support in both Capability API and in Nebula in the near future, so that we can continue to support our customers who are using Capability API, are looking to move to our cloud platform. They can continue to use Capability API in the cloud platform for the time being. And then as we continue to build out more functionality inside of Nebula, I mean, Tobias and team have done a tremendous amount of work and done a great job with documentation and making it easier to get started with Nebula. We'll continue to produce more migration type assets as time goes on to help our customers move from capability to Nebula. But it's still a vibrant solution for embedding from our platform.
Okay, great.
And now I'm going to move because my dogs are barking.
They want to be a part of the webinar.
Oh yeah, they agree. They
agree.
They approve of my message.
3 cheers to Jeff's answer.
And to that, maybe.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I can add to that we also, for people that are just getting started with Nebula like me, you can always use Glitch, where we have a couple of really easy get started examples that you can just play around with and get a feel before you can also do like bigger stuff. So that's a good resource to use.
Great, thank you. All right, and then we have a question on, can I use different chart libraries to make visualizations with Nebula? And I think we even maybe in one of our first sessions that we had on this developer series, we talked about how Nebula can work and integrate with other libraries. Does anyone want to speak more to that?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
It's basically the answer is the same as for outside frameworks. So when you're developing an extension, you get that interface that I showed you with the use layout and use elements hooks. But what you do after that is up to you. You could then add React, so that you internally use React, for example, to build your data table or something like that. Or you could use any other framework that you want. For example, we use our own Picasso, of course, quite a lot, but we also use D3 directly internally in a lot of our extensions. We also do use React or Preact. Doesn't actually matter a lot. There could be a few quirks to using some libraries, but in most parts, it's compatible with basically anything. So you're free to use any visualization library you want.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I think the flexibility is a big selling point of it, and that you can take advantage of the engine, which is a big part of the power of Qlik, in a way that you see fit, and be able to share how you want to visualize that data for your customers in the libraries and components that you're comfortable with. That's why Tobias and team have built out Nebula is in the way that they have. It's in some respects, it's not only to help Qlik from always having to get a rake to the face, as they say, as new frameworks pop up and become popular, but also for our customers, so that there's flexibility based on the framework choices that you make. It's a great way of providing an open platform. So thank you for that.
Jeff, can you introduce our newest panelist?
Oh yes, for anyone who cares, this is Ziggy right here, and he has a question as well. Ziggy's question is, do you have any Chimkin? The answer is no.
No,
there's no Chimkin.
All right. And so earlier, Tobias mentioned all the different hooks. So where can I find a list of all those different hooks?
Yeah, and I can share that, Katie, if you want to let me share my screen real quick.
Let me stop sharing.
And if I go to, so we have our Nebula introduction page. There's a lot of information about getting started with Nebula here on qlik.dev. But then if you go into the API reference and you scroll down into Nebula Stardust and you hit the reference there, you can see all of the different entries, and actually you can't because I'm in dark mode right now. So let me switch to light mode and zoom in a little bit. You can see all of these different items that have the word use in front of them are the different hooks that you can take advantage of inside of Nebula, and basically gives you access to things like state, gives you access to the actual data model. I know a lot of our extension developers are excited about this. One of the things that makes Nebula nice is it actually decouples the engine from the actual rendering components, and so now you can start to interact with the client in different ways and do some different things there. It's where you can start to get information like app layout and take advantage of that inside of your applications, build custom actions, and do different things. So,
and if you're used to React hooks, we have equivalents. Use state, use effect, use memo. They work basically the same way that it would do inside a React component. So use state allows you to store a state between render calls, for example. Then of course we have extra convenience hooks. For example, use rect here allows you to react to a size change of the object, which can be very important. We have use layout, as I said, that gets you the data. And use stale layout gets you the data, but it doesn't update if you are selecting in the active object right now. So it's a good way of handling that inside and outside selection mode.
oh, that's pretty cool. So that's almost like that could be a potential way to. Is that a potential way that you could like pause making selections, Tobias, or is it just okay?
There are basically two ways to do selection in objects. One is where if you click, it directly makes a selection and it updates all your objects. The other one, which we use in almost all our charts, is that you start doing selections, and the object you clicked in is locked. It just highlights what you clicked until you click OK, and then it applies that to that specific selection, and that's where use state layout comes in. And somewhere here is also the selections object. There's a use selections hook, which gets you the selections API, and that API has functions for begin selections, for example. And if you use begin selections, you go into this modal state where your chart stops updating as you click around. And there are some stuff around it here as well, how it works, I think. Not in that one, but in developing visualizations, I think.
Oh, okay.
Awesome. I'll just reiterate that Jeff is showing you guys qlik.dev, qlik.dev. That's all you got to put in your browser, and you have a plethora of resources. This is a great site to utilize if you're not already on it.
Cool. All right. I don't see any more questions, Katie. So
I don't see any more coming through. I'm going to do my last call for all questions. If you're on the call and you came with a burning question, we want to hear it. I'm going to share my screen and show you some other great resources. Let me pull this out. So, like I said before, we have our qlik.dev right here. I always have it up and favorited on my browser. And then Qlik Community is where all of these awesome events and programs happen. If you want to learn more Q&A sessions or see the past ones, all you have to do is click support on the top ribbon, then go into programs, and you'll see us sitting right there, Q&A with Qlik. And then Techsperts Talks is also a great program that support runs. If we are the live office hours, we like to call the Techsperts Talks the show and tell of support. So feel free to check out those sessions. I'm going to click right into Q&A with Qlik, and I'll show you Here, of course, is our upcoming events, but if you want to look at these past developer sessions, they're also listed out here, and I usually call them out. So you can look for the word developer series. We talked about the difference between Nebula, Picasso, and Enigma last 2 months ago. No, last month. It all blurs together. It's been a busy
last
half
month.
of the year.
It's crazy.
And we started our developer series with the state of the API. So those are great recordings. Definitely go out and check them out. And if you want to really dive into any of the topics that you see on qlik.dev or something that you're trying to figure out and get stuck on, let us know. And that's when we'll host more of these sessions. And then also just, a little plug for the support world. On our support updates blog is where you get all our product news to stay, in the know with what's happening in Qlik. So these are great areas. And then feel free to ask, a question on any of these forums. And forums, we have it based off of any product. So if you're a Qlik Sense or Qlik View user, you can look through all of these for additional help. So this is your Qlik community. Is there any final things you guys want to point out or call to before we?
I just want to wish everyone a great summer. If you're taking any holidays, enjoy. We're going to bring this back in the fall with a whole new slate of topics, including using our platform SDK, more Nebula stuff, and a fair bit on the CLI and OEM use cases. So if you know people that are embedding Qlik or looking to automate things like tenant creation, configuration, and deployment type use cases to serve visualizations to portals and public-facing websites, and do embedded analytics and all of those different use cases, come back to us in the fall because it's going to be it's going to be a lot.
It's going to be fun.
So it's going to be more than fun. It's going to be like learning kung fu in the Matrix.
And maybe we'll get to see more of our favorite panelist, Ziggy.
Yes, and of course more Ziggy.
All right. Thank you, Tobias. Thank you, Gertrude. Thank you, Jeff. We love having you, and we hope to have you all back soon.
Thanks, everyone, for joining. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.